Alright, man. Now, it's been a little minute since I posted a video. I was gonna go through every single position, but it seems like y'all really do like on this channel top 10s. So I'm gonna do my monthly power rankings of the players. I'm gonna do my monthly power rankings of the teams. Now, with that being said, I want to give y'all another Prem prediction before the start of the season. I said I was gonna do that. I'm gonna stay to that. And I also do want to give y'all a transfer window after the transfer window's over, and then give y'all another Prem predictions after the transfer window is closed. And in that Prem predictions, I'm gonna pretty much predict for every top 5 league who will be the winner. So hopefully this stuff is cool. I'm gonna give y'all shorts daily, so hopefully I can hold y'all down, but I don't know how frequently these videos are gonna be on this channel. But with that being said, today we're gonna be doing the top 10 players in the world. It's gonna be even more 10 more players to put in the honorable mentions, because I'm gonna be honest, it's pretty crowded right now. When I did this at the start of last year, I had 10 with 3 honorable mentions. The next video, even more honorable mentions. The next video, even more honorable mentions. And by the end of the World Cup, we're up to 22 total people gonna be in this video. Now, I'm gonna be real with y'all. I'm not basing everything solely on the World Cup, because I do think there's guys that got GA in the World Cup that didn't play that well. I think there were some guys that was coming off injury that didn't play that well. But I do think there was guys that we just don't really get to see enough that just at the World Cup just looked on a different level, you know? So I'm gonna try to put the context and have it more consistent, but this is gonna be pretty much the standard power rankings for the season. I won't lie, one of these guys we're not gonna be able to see that much the next 4 years, the next 2 years. So it's gonna be tough for him to stay on here. But for right now, this is going to be my top 10 players. He probably slides out of the rankings entirely, but out of respect, I have to put him on here. But yeah, that's what we're doing today. Y'all do want more? Like the video. We got a lot of honorable mentions to get into. Let's get straight to it. Alright, so for the first honorable mention of the video. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is a player that, in my opinion, he gets put into crazy conversations. He is overrated, but what he brings to the table is very, very valuable in today's game. Today's game is very, very up and down. Like, a lot of the best teams, when you think about PSG, a lot of people look at PSG's midfield. But if you watch PSG in a lot of these big games, they bypass the midfield. When they played Barca, when they played the big teams in the UCL this past year, they bypassed the midfield. And that was just a real thing that I really noticed this past season. Now, PSG is a very interesting team. But there's one thing that you really do need in these games. You need a destroyer. You need an engine. And this player that I'm going to have at last place of the entire list is literally that. He probably is the best in the world for that exact profile. An engine that can just get up and down the pitch and be that destroyer. May not be the greatest on the ball. May sometimes even shy away from the ball. But this is Declan Rice. Now, Declan Rice is one that I do think he kind of might have gotten overplayed somewhat, but I won't lie. A lot of the top end players, once they got to that point, they were having to play a lot of games. Now, you kind of have the PSG guys, you can't really say that, but if you say that for Bayern, you say that for Barca, you say that for Madrid, you say that for pretty much any of those other top teams besides really PSG, they were playing these games week in, week out. Now, maybe not Bayern as much because they was even kind of resting a little bit in the league. When they was in that PSG tie, but for the most part, I do give him a lot of credit because he was very, very important for the Arsenal. I do think Arsenal, when they talk about their best players, they kind of do overlook too, in my opinion, because I don't think there's really a debate for him being the best player on Arsenal. I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans hoping they could have got Vini. That was kind of obvious how that was going to play out, but I do think a lot of Arsenal fans are happy that they even tried, because it was kind of looking dire for them in attack last year. So I guess that was a positive in their eyes. But for now, I'm gonna put Rice here. I don't really have a lot negative to say about Rice. I just don't think he's better than these other guys. I think the profile that he brings is very important, but his ability is just kind of the one thing that kind of separates him from pretty much every midfield or attacker on this list. Simple as. Next, I actually had a player that I almost forgot to put here at all. But the next couple are all going to be very debatable at this position, the center back position. So I'm going to have Gabriel. At one point last year, Gabriel looked like the best center back in the world. I would say the first part. Then he gets injured. And I won't lie, you see Arsenal start to stumble a little bit. So you could make that argument that he is the most important center back, the most important player on Arsenal. because the goals started to stop. You know, the defense wasn't as good. The set pieces wasn't as good. It just was at that point. But then he comes back. They get right back to it. Now, there was another pivot in the season for Arsenal. Now, like I said with Rice, a lot of those players were playing heavy minutes, and a lot of those players were kind of getting worn down. But one tactic that teams started to do, they started to let those center backs have the ball. And ideally, mainly, Gabriel. So that's the one knock I kind of have on him. I also didn't think he had the greatest World Cup, but I would say, I'm gonna be honest, I would say that for a lot of players. I would say that for Rice. I would say that for pretty much almost majority of this list, except for really two that really stood out. And even one of those two, he was really more of a moments. You could even argue for both of those. They were really more so moments when they needed it. Their team needed it. But Gabriel, in my opinion, I will say this. I got a newfound respect for Arteta and how he sets them up defensively, because he definitely makes the job a lot easier and he profiles the players almost perfectly to get the most out of them. So you got to give Arteta a lot of credit for that. But I do think Gabriel is definitely one of the best players in the world. I wouldn't be mad if somebody said he's the best center back. Like I said, the next couple are all going to be center backs, and that's kind of the reason why there won't be a center back in the top 10. But yes, honorable mention. Next, we have Pacho. I think Pacho debatably reached the highest peak of any center back this season. What Pacho was doing in the UCL knockouts versus Bayern, the best attack in football. They broke records this year. It was unbelievable what they were doing. And what he did in that last game, really the last two games. People were saying the game before that had no defense. The game that had no defense this year, you want to see what no defense looked like? Go look at that third place World Cup game. That was literally no defense. You go watch that PSG Bayern game. That is just excellence. That is just the pinnacle of the sport. That was just ridiculous. That is probably the best game that we've seen this year. That was ridiculous. And there was defense in that game. It was just that good from a midfield standpoint, a defense standpoint. Now, I will say Neuer may have let in a couple goals. Like, he really wasn't saving anything. Maybe you could talk about the goalkeepers. But the defenders, they were doing all they could. It was just that good. The game was just that good. The level was just that high. But Pacho, the next game, after that goal game of a performance that you could say, the next game, what he does to Bayern, kill almost every single attack, ridiculous. In the final, I will say this. You can make a case that Gabriel was the best player in that final. But I also would say Pacho was very good in that final too. It's just that PSG had more possession of the ball. They were down. And they were just trying to break down Arsenal. Arsenal didn't even really want the ball for the most part. They were just trying to make them beat them. And their game plan worked. It's just that fact that they gave up a pin. If they don't give up a pin, Arsenal, like a lot of people banter them and Gabriel for missing that pin. But they didn't give up an open play goal in 120 minutes to PSG. So the game plan for the most part worked. They got their goal early. It's almost like they got their goal too early, I would say. But Pacho, in my opinion, I think that level that he reached in that Bayern leg, tie, whatever you want to call it, that's the highest level I've seen the center back doing. On the ball, defensively, what he was doing to Kane. Now, I will say Kane, he kind of made it a little bit easier on him. But even then, killing attacks, killing counters, he was ridiculous. In my opinion, he was ridiculous. Then next, going into the World Cup, this is the guy I had as the best center back. I'm going to be honest, Saliba. I think if we talk about consistency, start to finish, he can be underrated sometimes because of the fact that Gabriel is the guy that kind of pops up with the GA and stuff like that. And Gabriel, at one point, he was just breaking stuff, like where he was starting to even get assists off of set pieces. But I do think Saliba is the more all-around of the two. Like I said, when teams were starting to let the center backs keep the ball, I think Saliba was the guy that you could kind of depend on. And then you even look at it with France when he goes down. And I don't think he had a great World Cup. I know a lot of people look at his name and they give him a lot of credit, but I don't think he had that great. You could see he was clearly injured in a lot of those games, and he was kind of struggling for the most part for his level. But you could see, and I'm going to be honest for Chelsea fans, go look at how bad Lacroix was when he comes on. He was bad. He was pretty bad. And I will say this, if Lacroix looks that bad, and Konate couldn't even get in over him, what does that mean about Konate? Because then if you go watch the game against England, Lacroix and Konate were both bad. And they had to take off Konate to bring on the one that you probably don't see yet. But Saliba, I do think he was really, really good. I think the only time he played really dipped was at the World Cup. Like I said, all these Arsenal guys kind of just got worn down this year. So I don't really blame him too much for that. And then you've seen what happened against Spain, where he just couldn't play anymore. He genuinely just fell down and just said, I can't do it anymore. So I thought he was gonna get surgery. Apparently he's just gonna rest it. I don't know how that's gonna work, but yeah, honorable mention. And then I think the guy that I finally am ready to give it to for the best center back. But like I said, you could really say all 4 of these guys the best center back in the world, and I would not be mad at it. Upamecano. I think Upamecano is the best center back. Is he the best defender? I wouldn't go that far. But the best center back, I would say. I think people have this thing where they'll say he's prone to mistakes, but what center back isn't prone to mistakes? Saliba, think about the game last year when they even won against Madrid. The only goal they got in the second leg was a mistake by Saliba. You know, Pacho, he's had mistakes. And just even this World Cup, Gabriel, he's been prone to mistakes almost throughout his career with Arsenal. So I don't think that's really a fair thing, like, at all. Like, people will hate on Kubarsi before the World Cup because he plays in probably the worst defense possible tactically to be a defender. You're gonna get caught out in that defense. And so when he does get caught out the 3 or 4 times in the year, they act like that's what he does every game, when that's just not the case. Upamecano this year was the best center back. It was just tough to give him that credit because of that stipulation. But if you really watch the games when they had these big games, I do think against Arsenal was like the one big game he was kind of questionable, but every other game, and you think about the Madrid ties, you think about in the PSG ties, he was amazing. You think about for France, I think he was debatably the best center back. I think I end up giving it to Kubarsi after the France game because once Saliba came on, the level did dip. I do think he started to make some mistakes more on the ball, but I will say this: Upamecano on the ball, if it's not Kubarsi, the best center back on the ball, Upamecano is like another 6. And this is kind of what, when people say these profiles of these deep line playmakers are going, a lot of these guys are now just center backs. When you think about guys like Senesi, you think about guys like Kubarsi, you think about guys like Upamecano, a lot of these guys probably just would have been more 6s, but they're now center backs because you need your center backs to be able to play on the ball. But I think he's just so well-rounded. And I just think he just had the consistency this past year, and I gave him the edge, personally. Now, let's get into the next honorable mention. Now we're getting away from the center backs. That's all the center backs that we're going to have. I have one more defender, but he's actually going to be in the top 10. The next player we're going to actually have is Kimmich. I think that this is the most underrated player in the world. When it comes to the 6s, he's never in the conversation. Like, I see people say that Declan Rice is better. I'm going to be honest. Kimmich plays right back. If you watching the World Cup, in the game when they really were struggling and they needed a tactical change, they took him out the midfield and put him right back. I think that there's a lot of these engine midfielders that, especially when they're kind of shying away from the ball, you put them at the right back or left back, they really bring a lot to the game, because I don't think people realize how important the fullbacks are in the game right now. That's why PSG kind of dominating, because they have the 2 best fullbacks in the world by far. Like, no one can talk to that combination. So Kimmich, when he plays fullback, I do think Germany kind of trolled because he's by far their best midfield, but that actually gave a chance for a guy like Nemecha to show how good he actually is. But the other guy next to him kind of struggled for the most part, in my opinion, when it got down to the stretch. I do also think if Schlotterbeck stayed healthy, he may even could have gotten to some conversations that he probably should be in. Maybe not in these, like the top 4 of these guys. But you think about the Guehis, you think about the Kubarsis, you could probably say that Schlotterbeck is better, but he goes down. I think that was a big injury for them. But I think Kimmich, what he did at right back, midfield this season, he was a high level. No matter what position he was all year, I think he's one of these DLPs that people don't really give credit to. I do think the weird thing is when he plays fullback, he's actually pretty good defensively. Like when he played Yan Diomande at the World Cup, he was good. When he played Vini in the tie, he was good. So Kimmich is really, 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 really nice. I really don't understand it. On the ball, the tech is ridiculous. The passing really is ridiculous. But I will say when he's in midfield, you can get him called out. So it's kind of confusing with him. I will say that, but I do think honorable mention. And here's when we start getting ignorant. Now, I'm going to be honest. I've done this, like I said, since last year. For somehow, I never put him on any of these lists. But that was just how far of a dip of the level he had been since I started doing this. But Vini. I do think Vini, this past season, he was better than the previous year. I'll be seeing some people say that his play has dipped. His play was clearly better this year than he was the year prior. The year prior, after the Ballon d'Or, Vini was bad. He was genuinely nowhere near his level. Nowhere near. I do think Xabi Alonso started to get it going, where he started putting a little bit of pressure on him before the Atletico game. The Barca game is where it really started to dip. But did you start to see games in the second half of the season when Mbappe didn't play, and you could really see how good Vini is. He just plays better without Mbappe. Now, they did lose some pretty big games without Mbappe still, but in the UCL, I really do think Madrid actually had a chance to beat Bayern. They probably do just beat Bayern in general, if Courtois is healthy. But one thing I say about Vini, I don't think he had the greatest World Cup, but the thing is, he had the moments. And that's what I was saying when it came to the World Cup. A lot of the attackers, they didn't really have this consistent performances. They really were just showing up with moments. And I'll say this, I felt like Vini in every single game, he had 2 or 3 moments. The one game they lost, that probably was the one game where he only had one moment. The one moment I would probably say he had was the moment where he made the play to Enrique, and Enrique just doesn't make the shot. You know what I'm saying? The goalkeeper for Norway was amazing in that game. But the game before that, I didn't think he had a crazy moment against Japan, where he dribbled pretty much almost the whole team and almost got a goal. But the majority of the game, he wasn't really good. That's the one thing I say. And it's kind of the thing with Vini, I would say. And that's kind of why I don't know if it really works as much for him with Mbappe, because you kind of need the team to cater to him, because you have to just depend on him to just show up to have one of those 2 moments. If you have a guy that plays in the same area, it can kind of restrict him a little bit in terms of how many of those moments can he keep consistently doing. So Vini is an interesting conversation to be had, but I have him at honorable mention. I do think he's one of the best left wingers in the world, and I actually had to make a tweak because I almost did forget somebody based off this past season going into the next, but I do have him as an honorable mention. And then next, and this is what I'm saying, I'm not basing it fully on the World Cup. This was a guy that going into the World Cup was the best 10 in the world. Do I think he's the best 10 in the world? Probably not if we talk about the actual ability between 2 guys. But I would say this past season he was really good. I do think people underrate how good he was before amorim, because they think he just got all these assists after. He got a lot, but he still was getting assists prior. And you could see the dip in the form of United when amorim got fired was actually not just Mbeumo going to AFCON. It had to do with Bruno getting injured. So Bruno is actually a very interesting one. I have him here. I didn't think he had a good World Cup. I'll be honest. He actually had a pretty bad World Cup. It really didn't ever really get better. He had the game against Uzbekistan, but that was an everybody eats type situation. And people just overreacted to that. And that's another thing I say about the World Cup. A lot of people had a lot of good stats, but a lot of when they played these top teams, those stats kind of did falter a little bit. So that's one thing I say. I'll say Bruno. I don't mention. Then next, I actually have Vitinha. I think Vitinha had an interesting season this year. I feel like a lot of people don't really watch PSG, and so when they don't watch PSG, they just give credits to their players blindly. I think Vitinha was okay this year. I don't know if you can say. The thing with Vitinha is he had moments, and what he brings to the team, he's gonna do it consistently. He's gonna control games, but the way he controls games is just, I don't know, man. It's just not the most impactful. That's what I say. Because it kind of really opened my eyes when the way he was playing against Arsenal. Like, yeah, you have control of the game, but he really wasn't creating anything. Like, there's control in the game, but if you're just controlling the game to control the game, what are we talking about? Like, I'm not expecting him to score the goals, but I just expect a little bit more positive play out of him. It's not really negative, but it's like kind of neutral. It's not really pushing the needle. It's not like advancing the play. It's not really, the word I'm looking for is, it's not negative. It's not threatening. That's what I say. It's just not very threatening. Now, there's guys that can be threatening off the ball, but him being on the ball in these big games, it just didn't seem like it really wasn't much positive to it. It wasn't really threatening. It's just the fact that he can keep the ball. That's one thing I've seen. Now, there were some times in the season where he was threatening. I will say that, but I don't know. Vitinha, I kind of look at him a little bit differently now than I did, I guess, 6-7 months ago. But I still think he's one of the top midfielders in the world. But he's a guy I'm actually interested to see if he's going to fall or he's actually going to go up again. Because I definitely had him top 10. But yeah. Next we have João Neves. João Neves is, and this is what I'm saying when it comes to Vitinha. The only reason Vitinha can kind of even play the way he plays is because of João Neves and kind of Fabian Ruiz. A lot of the flaws that Vitinha has, it doesn't really matter because he plays next to João Neves. Or not, yeah, João Neves and Fabian Ruiz. Now, I will say neither one of those guys are really like the most creative players. You know, the thing is with their team, the fullbacks make up for how creative the midfield is. The midfield not really that creative. The fullbacks being so creative, getting forward, the attack being so creative, getting forward, it really makes up for the midfield kind of not being that. And the only person that really kind of controls the tempo is Vitinha. You have João Neves that's pretty much box to box. He can do whatever. Fabian Ruiz, pretty much box to box. And Fabian Ruiz, I think, does deserve a lot more credit because what he did in the World Cup, replacing Pedri, it was kind of more of a profile change that they needed. Like if you're gonna have Rodri and Pedri for the way that Spain play, you just need something a little bit more off the ball. This is what I'm saying. Like, and I do think we're gonna get there when we talk about it. But I think João Neves, for now, I probably would say Vitinha, the best midfielder. I would probably say João Neves, the best player on what's it called. And I wouldn't be surprised if people say Bruno should be over both, but I don't believe that personally. I don't. Then last but not least, in the honorable mention, this is gonna probably be. Oh, actually, I have two more. I have two more, and we're gonna say Diaz. Diaz, I think, had a really good season. And this is what I'll say about Diaz. Diaz would probably be a little bit lower on this list. But Diaz in the big games for Bayern was the best players. He was. And then if you look at the World Cup, those guys, when it came to the big games, they weren't playing next to Diaz. They were bad. Like Olise versus Morocco, Spain, England, bad. Now, the thing is about Olise is kind of like Vini. He's going to have those moments even when he's bad. Against Spain, he had no moments. Against Morocco, he had no moments. Against England, he had moments, but like I said, that's one of the worst defensive games I have ever seen in life. So, yeah, and if he just finishes any of those, we're having a whole different conversation. But, yeah, man, that's why I'm saying, like, GA has kind of just killed the brains of a lot. But if you watched that PSG tie came away with Kane or Olise as the best player at all for Bayern, you just were not watching the games. Diaz was ridiculous. He was ridiculous up and down that pitch. And that's one thing I noticed. I didn't even realize they don't really have an outlet. And the thing is, even if Davies is healthy, they kind of had that outlet both on the same side. It only would make more sense. It would only make more sense if Davies was more of a right back. But he's obviously a left back. And if Diaz was a right winger, but he's obviously a left winger. Because they really only have that outlet that they can use on that left side. They don't have an outlet in the middle because Kane likes to drop deep. Olise likes to invert. He likes to play. That's the thing I say about Olise, though. At the World Cup, they were playing him out of position. He's clearly a top 2 winger in the world. But, yeah, topic for another day. Diaz, in my opinion, in the big game, he was so important when it comes to the press, when it comes to what he does on and off the ball, and his finishing, the consistency, his aggression. That's just, it's so important for their attack because he's like the only profile that they have in attack that kind of brings that. So, I do want to give him a lot of credit. I don't think he's top 2 player on Bayern. I just think that he deserves a lot of credit. And honestly, I don't know if I believe he's over Upamecano, so I may have chatted on that one. Low key. I'm going to make an executive change. I'm putting Upamecano over Luis Diaz. Because I do think Upamecano is better than Luis Diaz, Kimmich. Yeah, I do believe that. I think he had a better season than all those. But, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Then, last but not least, for the honorable mentions, it's going to be the craziest one. People were saying he should have won Ballon d'Or. I thoroughly disagree. This is like last year, I was like, I love the story, so I'm like, he deserved it. But is he the best player on PSG? I didn't believe that. I didn't believe that. Like, you could really even make a case that he wasn't the third most impactful, third most best player. Like, you could make that case last year. This year, no way. It's not even like, even in the UCL, he wasn't the best player for PSG. And that was the only time he really played. He didn't really play that much in the league. So I don't really get it. Like, I think he actually still won the League One best player, which is crazy. I'm not going to speak too much on it. But again, this is not to hate on Dembele. Because Dembele, what he has done for his career completely changed. But you could even see that at the World Cup. I will say this. I do think Dembele is a good leader. Because, like, when he got subbed off with Bayern, I was like, hold on, that's a pretty rash decision. But you got to trust that manager. That manager, he make moves. In the final, he got subbed off, and they were going to go to pins. And it didn't matter. So you got to, hey, hands up. And the thing is, compare that to what Vini did with Xabi Alonso. He ain't pout. He even smiled and just came to the bench. They made no big deal of it. So that's an ultimate team player. I think he's a good leader. And even with France, like when France was obviously playing pitiful football. You know, I'm not blaming Mbappe for anything, but you could see Dembele was very agitated about that. Very angry and upset about that. And he came on. I don't think he was that great, but you could see he was at least trying things. He was better than Olise in that final game. Now, I would say, I don't think him or Olise had a good World Cup. I don't, personally. I think they had a lot of GA. I think it's kind of tough to not have GA in that attack, especially playing with Mbappe. I'm not going to knock him for it. I just think that, again, they were moments players. Dembele wasn't as much of a moments player, I would say, as Olise. I think he had that game against the backups of Norway. Before that, the discussion about Dembele, I think people forget that people was trying to say that this brother is not... Like, they was having a full discussion about PSG players in general before that game. That PSG players outside of that system, they don't look good. Now, I think people trying to say that for some of those midfielders, which I'm not mad at. But these are some of the best players in the world. Like, bro, this is like 20 players at the minimum. And we already have 4 PSG players. And spoiler alert, there's going to be more in the top 10. So, and there's only 11 players you can put on the pitch. So, I don't know what we're talking about there. I still think Dembele is one of the best players in the world. I thought he was deserving of the Ballon d'Or the previous year. It's just, this season, it was a lot more questionable for me. So, I had to put him in the honorable mention. Man, take a breath. We finally getting out of the honorable mentions. Like I said, it was a lot. We got the top 10 though. Let's get into it. So let's start it out with number 10. Coming in at number 10, Kvara. I'm gonna be honest, man. When they got him from Napoli was very good in the league. He was their best player. They got him for only 70 at the time. I said it was a steal. Getting him in January was ridiculous. And they go on and win the UCL. They do, I don't know how many trophies at this point. The next season, this is the thing though. In the league, he really didn't do anything. In the league phase, he didn't really do much. But in the knockouts, this brother broke records. He made history. That's like, it's very, very tough to compare. I've seen people say that Kvara is the best winger in the world. Let's slow the hell down. The two are the two. I think the top two are literally the top two. I think people are just wilding on that. But I do think Kvara, the level that he did reach in the UCL, he was inevitable. He was consistent. This wasn't really a moments thing. He was, every time he got on the ball, it's kind of like I was saying about Luis Diaz when it came to Bayern. I don't think Olise in that tie against PSG was that great. I think Luis Diaz was really good. I think he was a top 2 player. Who was the player better than him? Kvaratskhelia. He was ridiculous. Constant threat on the ball every single time he touched it. He could outside the box, inside the box, the playmaking ability, the scoring ability, the finishing ability. It was just ridiculous what he was doing in the UCL knockouts at a certain point. But the thing with him, the league, he gave nothing. He did nothing in the league. He did absolutely nothing. And I can't really knock him for not being in the World Cup because he didn't play. But like I said, a lot of these players on this list didn't really have a World Cup to the level of what they should have had, in my opinion. But yeah, 10. I have him at 10. Now, a player that actually shined at the World Cup, in my opinion, is Bellingham. Now, the thing with Bellingham, I'm going to be honest. I think Bellingham is extremely overrated. And this is not hate to Bellingham. He's extremely overrated. The discussions that he be in are diabolical. But, with that being said, when you put Bellingham in the right profile, it's tough to compare. It is very, very tough to compare that to anything in the league, in the world. I'll be honest. And I do think Bellingham with Kane is literally the perfect profile. That's why I'm going to do the next one. Number 8, Kane. Now, people are going to be like, how is Kane that low? How is Bellingham that low? I'm going to be honest. Bellingham in the big games, it's kind of questionable. It's kind of questionable. Madrid, he was not good this past year. He was just not good. And I'm going to be honest. The thing that's really crazy about Bellingham this past year, think about Madrid, how they started. People sleep on how crazy they started with Xabi Alonso. They had a ridiculous start. The game that Bellingham comes back, they lose 5-2. And then everything kind of starts to fall apart a little bit in the league. They do go on and beat Barca, but Barca was kind of injured at the time. That was a big deal at the time. But after that, they still you kind of started to see it fall apart. It kind of all started with Bellingham coming back. Now, the thing is with Bellingham, I don't know if he was healthy or not. A lot of people were saying at the World Cup he was finally fully healthy. I don't know if that's cope. I don't know what that is. I think it's more of the fact that he played and was profiled perfectly next to Kane. And pretty much a lot of the attackers were profiled perfectly. It's just a lot of those attackers are just not good outside of Bellingham and Kane. So I think that Bellingham playing next to Kane, perfect dynamic. The thing that doesn't really make too much sense to me is why does that not work with Mbappe? Because Mbappe, he doesn't false 9, but he drops deep. He does drop deep. Does he drop all the way to playing like a 6 like Kane? Is he a playmaker anywhere close to Kane? Hell no. Not even close. So maybe that's what it is. But the thing is, that why it works so well, Kane with Bayern, you can see the problems with this in at Bayern, especially against PSG. There was times in the box where Bayern were just way too passive in the box. They couldn't make the right decisions, you know? And Kane would be nowhere around the box. When you're doing that with Bellingham, Bellingham is now occupying that space that Kane is leaving open. So that's why I'm kind of confused. Because Mbappe, he don't like to sit in the box himself. He likes to drop deep. But the thing is, maybe the difference is Bayern plays a little bit more possession style. And so when that space isn't being occupied, he may not be given the amount of time he's given with England, with Bayern, on Madrid, where it's just not the same style of play. So maybe that's what it is, more so than it is being Kane and Mbappe. I do think Mbappe is clearly not nowhere near the playmaker of Kane. So I don't know, but I just think that these guys work so well together. Now, the reason why Kane is this low, Kane in the big games, brother, that PSG tie opened my eyes. I think Kane as a playmaker is ridiculous. I think Kane is one of the best playmakers in the world, and he's a 9. I think, honestly, bro, if this brother was a 6, he would arguably be the best 6 in the world. I'm not gonna lie. This brother is ridiculous. The thing is, he's just not defensive. He don't have the defensive ability. Now, I will say at the World Cup, his pressing was a lot better than I expected. His tracking back was a lot better than I expected. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't expect him to be moving like this at his age, but he was. I actually thought before we got to the big games, Kane was handily the best player for England, even though a lot of people said that was Bellingham. But I don't think people realized the reason why Bellingham was having the games, the plays, and the way he was able to perform had a lot to do with even Kane. So even when Kane, you could even say even when Kane was having bad games and Bellingham had great games, like the game before the Argentina game, you could even still give a lot of credit to Kane. But the thing is, when you're not able to get into those zones and you're playing a good defensive team like Argentina, that's really not allowing you to just get into those zones very easily. You could see where if Kane is having a bad game, Bellingham is still going to struggle. And I think that may be a little bit more of what it is. When teams don't really give you that space as easily, and that's probably what it is with Madrid more than it is playing with Kane, maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm going too far. But there is a big conversation going into the World Cup about big games. I really wasn't that big on it because I think that a lot of people, when they talk about big games, they're talking about GA. I thought he was bad against PSG, both of those games, honestly. But he had the moments, he had the moments. And it was damning in that second leg where he was never in the box. The one moment this brother decides to just sit in the box, He shields Pacho, who had, like I said, the peak that Pacho reached in that game, the level he was playing in that game. All it took was one moment and Kane finishes. But the thing is, it was just too late. It was way too late. So Kane is just a very, very questionable guy in these big moments. And I would probably just take, it is debatable between him and this next guy. Now, if I'm going to be honest, if I'm doing a Ballon d'Or right now, going into the World Cup, I would have had Kane. After the World Cup, it's a lot different because I don't think Kane is the best player. I just think he had the best season statistically. And the numbers he was putting up were undeniable. But if we keep getting more big games and he's doing that, it's tough. It's just tough to say that. Like, if it was just the PSG tie for me, okay. But him to do that against Argentina, he was bad. He was really bad. It's where it's tough. But this is not a Ballon d'Or video. And then next at 7, we have Michael Olise. Michael Olise has his own questions in these big games. I think if you want to say Kane was bad against PSG, Michael Olise was clearly worse. Clearly worse. I think against Madrid, Olise wasn't that good either. I'll be honest. And when I'm saying these guys aren't good, I'm saying for their standards. I think Olise is clearly the second best winger in the world. I think for the past 2 years, he's been the clear second best winger in the world. It's just the guy that's over him is debated the best player in the world. But that's a top for another day. But Olise, what he does this past season statistically, he had the best statistical season out of any winger. If you're a GA guy, you should say that Michael Olise is the best winger in the world. So anybody that says that and you really do care a lot about GA and you base a lot of your argument around that, that's just being consistent. So I'm not mad at you. But if you watch Olise in some of these games, he is ridiculous. On the ball, his off-ball movement to allow the fullback to overlap. That's one thing I will say, though. If he does play right wing, his chemistry with a right back is very important for his game. I will say that. But Olise, as a playmaker, as a creator, he's ridiculous. I think if we talk about out of all the players in the world, he's top 2. I will put him over Bruno easily. I know people were saying before the World Cup that Bruno was cleared because he broke the record in the Prem for assists. He's nowhere near Olise as a creator. Both on the ball, set pieces, he is better. Set pieces, he's clearly better. But we talking about the dribbling ability with the passing ability. No, it's just not that. It's just not that level. Do I think he's the best? It's tough. That's tough because you could say, I would say this. I think Olise is arguably more efficient, but the thing is, he's playing this past season. He just played in a better attack, is what I would say. But to be able to get that, he literally broke the assist record at the World Cup in his first World Cup. And he had a bad World Cup in my opinion for his standards. So I don't know. Olise is very tough. Big games, I already mentioned it earlier. The game against Morocco, unbelievable, really bad. The game against Spain, oh my, I was trying my hardest to defend it. I can't. That was bad. That was really bad. And there was times he was getting space on the ball to do a lot. It's not like he was getting double teamed. It's not like he was getting marked. He was just so wasteful. And the thing is, I was like, bro, it's embarrassing. Just get Cherokee on. Cherokee comes on and just is even more wasteful. I don't know what Spain was doing to them people, but it's like they were under so much pressure when there really wasn't even nobody around them half the time, and they would just still be wasteful. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. But Olise, I do have him 7. I think if we just talk about talent, you can even argue he should be higher. But for now, I have him 7. And then at 6, this may be one of the most controversial picks I have Pedri. I think Pedri is the best midfielder in the world. Still. I think at the World Cup, Rodri was the best midfielder at the World Cup. I don't think Pedri had a good World Cup at all for his standards. Do I think he was bad, though? It's tough. It's tough. And this is why I say it's tough. In the 2 games that Spain needed him the most to play well, those were his 2 best games. Cape Verde, when they had nothing going in attack. Now, when the moment Lamine comes on, the attack is instantly drastically better because now you have so much attention put on him. Now, I think that in the way that the entire defense shifted over that way, that opened the eyes to De La Fuente of what they should do after that. But that's the top for another day. I think one thing that De La Fuente got wrong, if you were going to do Pedri and Rodri, in that game, you need Olmo. But he was ridiculous in that game. And then when he came on in the final, now I think he came on when the red card had already happened, so there is an asterisk there. But he was by far the best player once he came on. It wasn't even really close. He was easily the best player. He was creating all the chances. He was ridiculous on the ball, keeping possession. But the games in between, especially the 2 games before that, yeah, it's nowhere near. He was bad. He was nowhere near his level. He was nowhere near. And another thing I would say, bro, we on a streak. The big games. Now, I will say this. It's different for Pedri because he was coming back from an injury in that Atletico tie. That second game, he wasn't good. But he was coming back from an injury, but he wasn't good. He just wasn't. And I will say back-to-back years, and when Barca lose, there is a connection to Pedri just not playing that well. In my opinion, I do think there's a connection there. But I do think if you're comparing it to any of these other guys, like the way he just does everything in the midfield. He's arguably the best defensive midfielder in the world, statistically. And then when it comes to the controlling, setting the tempo, the tech, it's unbelievable. And he's such a positive player. And I feel like, bro, I don't know what it is with Pedri. People just dislike him like he doesn't do anything. Like, I don't know how you could even remotely say Pedri doesn't do anything. I genuinely believe if Pedri was just 2 or 3 inches taller, the conversations around Pedri would be so different. I don't know what it is. Like, and I think Rodri had a good World Cup, but I don't think Rodri on the ball was that different from Vitinha. I think Rodri's most important thing that he brought to the World Cup was controlling the game, similar to what Vitinha does. He wasn't really that positive with his play, though. The thing was, he was killing counters. He was helping the defense. And Spain literally, arguably, had the best defense ever for a World Cup. I think that's what was really big about Rodri. If Pedri only did that, you know, they wouldn't like that. It would be different. And I do think it has a lot to do with his height. I'm going to be honest. His size. I think because people think he's so undersized, they think he's a bad defender. That's just not the case. And you can see it in the game against France. You can see it in the game against Belgium. They get the lead. They bring on Pedri. The game is over. No matter how you feel about Pedri, the game is over. Like, the control of the game goes up 1,000,000, and then your counter potential is just piss at that point. Because now you have to try to counter on Rodri and Pedri in the midfield with that defense. And again, a player I really wanted to put on here. It's just that I don't think his form was the same level as the year prior. I think at the World Cup, he was the best defender. Cucurella. I wanted to put Cucurella on here. I just couldn't find the spot for him. Because, like, he's not over any of these center backs this past year from Gabriel. It was him or Rice. I think Rice just deserved it more this year. And I already have 20 players. I can't have that many players. But, like I said, I don't think Pedri had a good World Cup by any standards. In the regular part of the season, he was the best midfielder, in my opinion. I don't think it was really that close. I think Bellingham made it closer post-World Cup. I think the other midfielders, though, they didn't have good World Cups, just like Pedri. And I think Pedri had better World Cups than those guys because what he did in the final, in the game against Cape Verde. And like I just said, if Spain had the lead, the game was over. It's just that simple. The issue with Spain is they needed the attack, and they needed the profiling. The profiling was a big deal in that midfield next to Rodri. And like I said, Rodri was so important for that back line. And I do think if you do Spain, if you do Barca, and you go Pedri and Rodri, that's a completely different situation. Barca, on the other hand, need that defensive solidarity. Spain, on the other hand, just needed as much that could help them in attack. They just needed more off the ball players, more players that could get it forward. And I think Pedri was good on the ball in some of those games. But the thing is, if you already have that controller with Rodri, you don't really need 2 controllers for Spain. It just don't make too much sense for them. But when they have the lead, it made sense instantly. For Barca, we already know the defense is the problem there. So that's a whole different conversation. But I have Pedri at 6. And then we're getting into the top 5, man. I'll be honest, man. This top five is where it gets special, in my opinion, because all of these players are some of my favorite players. Oh, no. Let's not go too far. 4 of these players are some of my favorite players. One, I really have a love-hate rate. Not a love. I don't hate, but it's kind of a relationship where it's like, I don't really know how to really feel about bro. But yeah, number 5, this is the best defender in the world. This is the most the conversations around Nuno these past 2 years. Last year, you could make a case that Nuno had the best left back campaign ever. What he did to every right winger in the world, and I'm talking about Lamine Yamal, I'm talking about Saka, I'm talking about Olise, I'm talking about Cole Palmer was the only one that could get at him. But even Cole Palmer, when he got at him, it was inverted with a fullback. And you've seen that with Olise in the first leg, where you can kind of get at him. But it was really, it's kind of like when you see three people tracking Lamine, and he breaks through that. That's just not real. If you're a defender trying to go against 2v1, that's just not realistic expectations. So I don't really hold that too much against him. But you've seen in the second leg when they just simply made the adjustment to give him the extra help when he gets further forward so he couldn't get caught out, let Fabian Ruiz cover for him, and then it was just over with. It was over with. And that's why that manager is the best manager in the world. So shout out to bro. But I think what Nuno Mendes does defensively to his matchups, what he does on the ball, off the ball, getting forward, it is not comparable. He is easily, bro, I'm going to be honest. We could talk about a lot of these midfielders. Set pieces, he's better than a lot of these guys. Playmaking, he's better than a lot of these guys. He's a better finisher than a lot of these guys. And he's a fullback. And this is what I'm saying. His ability, technically, defensively, it's not real. It's genuinely not real. He literally has the ability of one. Literally, if he was a winger, he would be one of the best wingers in the world. Genuinely. Nuno would be one of the best wingers in the world if he was a winger. He would be beyond like the Vinis, the Kovaras. Would he be better than guys like Duways? I don't know. I'm going to be honest. He would be better than a lot of the top wingers in the world. That's all I'm going to say. Because I'm going to be honest. When they played, I ain't going to lie, they put him a winger. This brother was, the amount of chances he was creating versus us when they put him at winger was unbelievable. I could not believe my eyes. This brother is ridiculous. The brother has literally no flaws. The flaw is that you give your winger an overlap, he's gonna struggle when it's 2v1. Like, what fullback doesn't struggle in that situation, bro? You know? So I don't know. Nuno is just an almost flawless player. Does he have bad games? Everybody has bad games. I think Nuno was by far and away the best player for Portugal, and you've seen it the moment he came off. And the thing is, you didn't really feel his presence defensively. I think the way what happened when he came off, they was kind of still double teaming. You didn't have to double team. You didn't have to help as much. But I do think João Felix, before he came off, he was supplying help, but he wasn't helping as much. When he came off, João Felix had to help more. So I don't think the defense really took that hit, because I don't think Lamine had the greatest World Cup coming off the injury, whatever you want to say, the context, decoy, whatever you want to say. But I will say this. You could see a drastic difference with their attack, their control of the game, the moment Nuno Mendes comes off the pitch. It's just facts. So I think Nuno, his importance is not only felt on one side. It's not only felt in one type of play. It's felt in every way possible. And I do think he is one of the most important players to his team in the world. It's facts. Hopefully I made my case. I know people are going to be mad about 5. I really do love Nuno Mendes' game. Now, we get into the big dogs. Number 4, Mr. Inevitable himself, Haaland. I think Haaland has a case as the best striker in the world. I'm going to keep it being. The thing is with Haaland, he's just not the most creative player. I do think he had probably his best creative season this year. The thing I give Haaland a lot of credit for compared to some of the other guys, I think he plays on a team that plays against his strengths. City don't play anywhere close to his strengths. We've seen flashes of City last year in that range where they went on like a crazy streak in the Prem, and they were untouchable, and they were playing counter-attacking football. A lot of the top teams' fans could not believe that Pep was playing that style of play, and that was trying to cater to not just Haaland's strengths, but Donnarumma's strengths, and that was when they were playing at the best the whole season. And then he stopped a little bit once Cherky came back, and they tried to play a little bit more possession, and you kind of seen Haaland kind of get out of play. Now, if he's going to get out of play, they didn't really have a consistent score outside of Haaland. But the thing is, if you're playing to Haaland's strength, this is debatably the best player in the world, because it's literally not much you can really do to neutralize him. It's really so tough. And I do think if Argentina had to play Haaland, they probably would have lost. I think England beating them was the best case scenario for Argentina, in my opinion, because I don't know how Argentina deal with that personally, especially with the amount of opportunities he be usually getting. Now against England in that second half, he just didn't have no chances. That's the thing. If he doesn't get chances, he kind of doesn't do much. The thing is though, you put Haaland on a team like PSG, it's over with. You put Haaland on a team like Barca, it's over with. You put Haaland next to Olise, it's over with. It's over with, bro. You put him next to a player that just creates chance. That's why I'm like, I know people were saying Vini to Arsenal. If Vini would have went to City, that would have been ridiculous. That would have been ridiculous. Because I do think Vini is another player that kind of is hurting from Mbappe, because Mbappe isn't a box guy. And Vini, he creates a lot of chances if you have a box presence guy. So I think Haaland, he's a striker that, in my opinion, he could fit on any team, because we're seeing him play he's playing a style of play that doesn't even play to his strength, and he's arguably still the best striker in the world. So I do think Haaland is just ridiculous. I think he probably is the best striker. Is he the better player of another player that plays striker? I would probably have to say no. And that other player, people probably like, bro, how are there 3 players better than Haaland? Yeah, bro. It's Mbappe. It's Mbappe. Mbappe, man. I'm gonna be honest. Mbappe, this past, the numbers. If you're a numbers guy, it's really hard to really talk about Mbappe. The brother had the Golden Boot at the World Cup, the UCL, and the La Liga. He didn't win any of these. He didn't even make it to the final of any of these. Like, in La Liga, he missed time and he still got that. Like, he almost won that off of his first part of the season alone with Xabi Alonso. And I'm gonna be honest, if Xabi Alonso stays with the injuries that Barca got, now I won't lie, Barca only really fell apart like at the very, very back end. But the injuries that Barca had throughout that second part of the season, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, they would have kept Xabi Alonso. I don't know, because Mbappe was playing out of his mind with Xabi Alonso. He was ridiculous with Xabi Alonso. It's just Bellingham, he wasn't getting the most out of Bellingham, but he was getting the most out of Gula. He was getting the most out of Mbappe. So I don't know. The fact that his play dipped that much and he still ended up with these numbers is ridiculous. Mbappe's, I think he already leads. He has the most goals ever in the World Cup. I think he already has that record, and he's probably keeping that, because I doubt Messi goes to another World Cup. I will say this. I think Mbappe was a moments player, but the thing with Mbappe is he was inevitable. I just don't think that he played really any comp for the most part. And when they did play comp, he struggled. And I would say England don't count, they count, but I don't know what that game was. That game was kind of crazy. But you can't question what he does in the World Cup. This is the all-time player at the World Cup. It's not debatable. Going into it, people were saying he was top 5. I said that's crazy. It's too early. He's top 5. He's top 5. You know, he's top 5, bro. He's top 5 ever already. And he may be higher, man. He might be the best World Cup player ever. He just might. I'm not gonna lie. He might. He might. But Mbappe's level, the stats, it's just that. It's just, does he make any of these teams better? I genuinely am of the belief if he plays as a left winger for France, they probably win the World Cup. Dembele as a false 9, Olise in the right wing, and you put Cherki in the 10, I think they probably win the World Cup. Even you could put Doué in the 10. I don't really care who you put in the 10. But if you just let everybody play their natural positions, they probably just win the World Cup, in my opinion. But he playing striker, so now Dembele has to play out of position, so he's either playing in the 10 or a right wing. He's nowhere near the same level. He's just nowhere near the same level. That has just been the profile that has completely changed his career. So now we're scaling him back to something that he just isn't. And then you have Olise, who still is good as a 10. He's just nowhere near the same level as what he plays with Bayern in that right wing spot. And he's just not the same in that right wing spot if you have Mbappe for whatever reason. I don't know. But yeah, man, I think Mbappe is a question. It's a conversation to be had. Does he make any of these teams better that he's on? Now, obviously, he goes to a team like Arsenal that has no attack. That's a different conversation. I just think the teams that he's on, they have all these plethora of options in attack that it's like, it just doesn't all fit together. So maybe you can make a case that these other teams need these other attackers that he's on, because he's just that level. I don't know. But I have him at number 3. And then at number 2, going into the World Cup, I thought was the best player by far in the world. I think he had the best season. overall as a player. The level, the peaks, the levels, the performances is just not close in my opinion. The World Cup, he wasn't good. I will say it's another one of those guys that he didn't even have the GA. So if you want to do the GA argument, but I would say Lamine is just not a GA player. He's never really been that. Like, I think he has progressed for sure this past year as a finisher. I think he progressed as an off the ball player, but even as a finisher, I think some of that is more so pins. I think he just took a lot more pins this past season than he did the year prior. But I will say he definitely progressed as a player, like, in a lot of different ways. Now, you have all the ups and downs of the season. He was in and out the lineup at some points. You had the pubalgia thing, and then you have the World Cup. I think Lamine coming out of his 18-year-old season as the Ballon d'Or is not a crazy thing. He won the World Cup. Was he the best player on his team? He was arguably the most important player still, and he didn't play well. Him as a decoy, and people want to have this revisionist history. I've seen some people saying they didn't even need him. Brother, did we forget what happened in Cape Verde? Bro, everybody was saying Spain looks terrible. And then he comes on, and now they're making a big deal about them losing. They genuinely looked bad without him. They looked like they couldn't do anything going forward. Now, Ferran Torres scores that goal. It's a different conversation, clearly, because Pedri has an assist, you know what I'm saying, there. And Ferran has a goal early on. And Ferran, if he scored that, maybe he starts. And I think he was their best striker. I don't think Oyarzabal was that good. I think he led them in GA. But again, I'm not a GA person. I'm just not. But Lamine as a decoy. And you can kind of see teams start to realize he was a decoy. Now, then you had a game against France where he was just the best player on the pitch, I believe, besides Cucurella. And I don't know. Cucurella was ridiculous in that game against Mbappe. Mbappe was bad in that game. Mbappe was very, very bad in that game. I would say Mbappe versus Paraguay was bad. I would say Mbappe was bad against Morocco. I would probably say the same thing about Olise with the Paraguay and Morocco and Spain. But this is just a thing that's going on for a little bit too long, where we just can't act like it's not a thing with Lamine and Mbappe. And I'll say this. Maybe best player on the pitch is too far. Attacker, it wasn't even close. France had no attacker that did anything. Cherokee came on, he didn't do much. No, he was bad. Olise was bad. Mbappe was bad. Dembele was the one guy that you could argue. And I've seen a lot of people saying he was the worst attacker for them. I don't know what game we be watching. Was he his level? Was he his standard? No, but he was clearly better than the other three. Clearly. It wasn't even a conversation in my opinion. But Lamine in that game, that was the game where he was actually creating chance after chance. He makes the play for the penalty. I'm gonna be honest, that was a pin, but like Digne just, I don't know. And then after that, Digne was just getting fried that whole game. And then they took him off. The next guy comes on, he's getting fried. So the thing is, he wasn't getting GA. The thing is with Spain, majority of the World Cup, they use him more as a decoy. Even when they weren't using him as a decoy, you could see it as it kind of got later and later. He started to play safer and safer. And you seen the pass, the play when Porro got his goal, he does a pass. Instead of attacking his man one-on-one, or really one-on-two, he sees Porro open, he just gives him the ball. Porro makes the pass to Porro makes the run, passes it to Porro, and Porro gets the goal. You see another thing that happens where Porro gets I think he was the one that made the pass to Nico, and then Nico has the ball to Ferran, and they get the game winner. So it's just like those times where Lamine would usually just take his man one-on-one, he really just said, it's just better this way. So, and it worked. So if it didn't work, it'd be a different conversation. Him being a decoy, him playing passive, him being safe, it'll be a different conversation. I'll tell you that right now. Because he didn't really have no crazy performance in that World Cup except for France. I think he was actually pretty good against Argentina. I'm not going to lie. It would be a whole different conversation if he gets a goal in the final, because that goal, he should have had a goal. Lisandro Martinez, that play that he makes on that shot, that's an underrated play. And I think Lisandro Martinez actually is pretty underrated coming off. But the thing is, Argentina were playing for pins. They didn't have a shot to like the 117 minutes into the game, I believe. That's unbelievable. But they were so negative in that game. I think Lamine, honestly, the best player in the world, but this guy, bro, the conversations around him going into the World Cup, I just got to give him that respect. He's been doing it for so long, We just haven't been able to watch him. That's why he's just not been in this conversation. But the moment we're able to see him again, he's just a whole different level than them. You take the inevitability of Haaland. You take the numbers aspects that people just cannot match on the consistency level of Mbappe. And then you take the eye test, the performances of Lamine, and you get this guy that I have at number 1, the greatest player of all time. Somehow, still, in 2026, we're going to a World Cup. If you would have told me that Lionel Messi was not just the best player in the World Cup, debatably had his best World Cup by far, from a number standpoint. Now the thing is Lionel Messi as good as he was in the last World Cup as a player? The level? No. Is he top 3 in terms of the caliber for any of these? No. This is the worst Lionel Messi we've ever seen. And he's still probably the best player in the world. It's actually insane. Now the thing is, when we do these in the future, when we doing it like monthly, for instance, September, will Lionel Messi be on this list? Probably not. I'm not going to be ranking him in this area off of MLS. That's why if he would have won the Ballon d'Or off of the World Cup, I wouldn't be mad at it, because when it comes to their consistency of how they do the international, he was so far and away a surprise in how good he was at the World Cup. That was the Ballon d'Or. They give the Ballon d'Or based off international tournaments anyway. We've seen that at the Euros, the last World Cup, the one before that, whatever. It would have been consistent, so I wouldn't have been surprised. It's just the fact that he's at the MLS, so it's like, okay. But yeah, when it comes to this one, we didn't do a players ranking prior. This is what we got. The next one, Messi probably isn't on it. I probably have it a little bit more concise, but I wanted to have this be the biggest one of the season, because this is going to be the one before the season. The next time we do this, we'll have games, which I can't wait. But yeah, if y'all do want more, make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe. This is my top 10 players with honorable mentions. Y'all do want more, y'all know what to do. Just show the support. Comment down below, who do you guys think is the best player in the world? I know for a fact, y'all may even say Kane. Ballon d'Or is different from the best player. I think Kane is very deserving of the Ballon d'Or. Like, that's not even really debatable. It's just in the big games. Everybody has a case. I've seen some people say Messi still has a case. Now, I'm going to be real. Shout out to Rodri. Rodri was the best midfielder at the World Cup. I said that. Was he the best player for Spain? I did not believe that. That's why the Golden Ball makes no sense, because he wasn't even the best player for Spain. I think Cubarsí and Cucurella were clearly better than Rodri. Maybe not clearly better. Cucurella clearly. Cubarsí a little bit more debatable, in my opinion. I think Cubarsí and Rodri, in my opinion, played similar roles. It's just Cubarsí literally went against Mbappe and neutralized him completely. And that made me the best World Cup player ever. Cucurella did the same thing to Lionel Messi. And this is what I said about Lionel Messi. I said this for the other guys. Messi was the ultimate. He was the ultimate moments player. There was times where they would be down and they would just get a ball to Messi. And that was the answer to all their problems. And it almost hurt the game for Spain if Cubarsí don't make that play. But yeah, man, I'm going to say for now, that's my list. And that's going to be the video. If y'all do want more, y'all know what to do. Without further ado, man, it's your boy Fitz. I'm out of here.
Tell them to bring me my money. Yeah!